It's not difficult for us to achieve financial freedom. As long as we find the right methods, you can easily achieve it. Hello everyone, this is Brown's Wealth Management Watchtower. I am committed to building a visionary watchtower for you so that you can clearly identify your direction and move forward steadily in a complex and changing investment environment. This is a client I encountered while working in an investment bank. This is a real case and not a friend without experience. I spent several hours talking to him and roughly figured out his background. Let's talk about his basic situation first. He had been graduating from college for 6 years and was almost 30 years old. He was based in New York and had made his fortune in the past year. For over 5 years, he had been an office worker with a monthly salary of around 3,500 yuan, and his life was not bad. However, he didn't have much pursuit for himself and had always held a grassroots position in the company. His wealth history is a bit bizarre. In fact, their family is a working-class family in a small city. He had good grades, but he excelled in college and was admitted to the school he had always dreamed of. My parents are also happy, giving him 2,000 yuan in living expenses every month, afraid that he won't have enough to eat or be looked down upon by children in big cities. He has never had any money-burning hobbies except for studying and reading novels since he was young. During college, I felt insecure and shy, and didn't often hang out with others. I commute back and forth between the classroom, library, and dormitory every day, and have saved 30,000 yuan over the past 2 years. He originally planned to give it back to his parents all at once after graduation, to surprise them. For a student who is idle and has a lot of money, they will naturally think of investing. At that time, he met a senior who was 1 year older than him in the school club. They can be considered acquainted at Weishi. They met while working at the grassroots level. Senior students are the kind of people who are particularly good at coming up with things, love to work, speak very fast, and have a quick mind. They used to be on the school debate team. As expected, 1 year later the senior was promoted to the position of club president. But my client is someone who is not good at expressing themselves, so I particularly admire the senior. During my sophomore year, I heard my senior talk about stock investment every day, saying that the time to enter the market had come. In fact, the performance of the senior was not very good at that time, with both gains and losses, and it was a waste of time. His studies were delayed, and he occasionally failed courses. The people around him are just bragging like seniors, and no one believes him when it comes to investment. He didn't know what kind of demon he was possessed of, and inexplicably trusted his senior, thinking that what he said was right. So, without understanding anything, he followed him to buy stocks. It's strange to say that since he entered the market, the stock has been climbing steadily. He doubled his earnings in half a year, but later he was also stunned. Not only did he invest all his savings, but he also borrowed tens of thousands of yuan from his parents in the name of applying for classes and taking postgraduate entrance exams. The effect is surprising. In less than a year, he invested over 100,000 yuan and eventually earned nearly 200,000 yuan. In the blink of an eye, the senior graduated and approached him, saying that they wanted to start a business together and collaborate with others to establish a company selling men's clothing. He thought to himself that all his money was earned by his senior and it wouldn't hurt to trust him again, so he took all his money out of the stock market. That was his only large-scale venture capital investment so far, doubling his returns without being beaten by the stock market, which can be considered a legend. Speaking of that company, due to the lack of support from his family, he did not participate in entrepreneurship and operation. He only invested 300,000 yuan as original shares, accounting for 10% of the shares. He is not even clear about the composition and development direction of the company, he just trusts that senior unconditionally. When he graduated, bad news came that the clothing company couldn't continue and had to be sold. He only received 250,000 yuan. The senior is not giving up and says he wants to continue entrepreneurship. His next direction is a human resources company. Ask him if he will join yet. He knew nothing about that, but without any hesitation, he gathered some savings and handed over 300,000 to his senior. This time we still hold a 10% stake. With all his savings cleared, he has joined a fierce job search army and joined a company that offers overtime and a monthly salary of less than 4,000 yuan. Started a 5-year rental life, as if the 300,000 had never happened. In the 5 years after graduation, he didn't have any romantic relationships and had very little social interaction. He was exhausted from work every day and spent weekends walking around. Stock trading is completely unnecessary. In my 3rd year of work, I finally saved up 20,000 yuan and was persuaded to invest in the popular financial lending at that time. It was a sudden disaster and I didn't have a penny left. He approached his senior at the most desperate moment, who said the company was developing well, but now it was time to spend money, and advised him not to take out dividends. He hesitated for a long time and ultimately didn't say anything about the investment failure. After dropping the phone, he stayed up all night. The next day, he wrote an expense plan and started living a tight life like he did 3 years ago when he just graduated. He told me that until a year ago, he felt like he hadn't had a luxurious meal since graduating from high school. When he was in college, he saved money to invest in stocks, and after graduation, he saved money to engage in financial loans. After the storm, he had to live frugally again. Even though his parents gave him a lot of money, he made a lot of money from stock trading, and even earned a decent salary from the company. Why did he stay so poor for so many years? He felt like he was almost depressed at that time. Then, with a relieved smile, he told me that life is actually a constant uphill climb. When you reach the bottom, as long as you keep moving forward, you will get closer and closer to new peaks. A year ago, on a summer night, he was sweating profusely in the office giving a report when he suddenly received a long-lost call from his senior asking him to go to a restaurant at 5 p.m. the next day. He had something important to tell him, but he said he had to work overtime and might not be able to go so early. The senior said he would take a leave of absence, so he might not have to go to work after dinner. After hanging up the phone, he opened Jinping website and looked at the restaurant, which had an average of over 500 yuan per person. He didn't go home that night, but worked overtime until midnight to get the report out. Then he asked his immediate supervisor for a day off. Before that, he hadn't taken annual leave for 2 years. The next day's dinner was not only for the two of them, but also for a middle-aged man dressed very plainly. The senior introduced the name of the middle-aged man, which he felt very familiar with. He had read his interview in a magazine before and seemed to be an investor on Wall Street. When he came home that night, he was completely bewildered. He was repeatedly savoring the words of his senior. The senior said that the company wants to introduce professional investors for its development and growth. When asked if he is willing to sell half of the shares for 4 million yuan, my client said he is considering it and will reply tomorrow. When the senior left, I privately told him that the price is quite high, and I won't lie to you. He thought to himself, the price is not quite high, it's too high, it's simply beyond imagination. With investment returns of dozens of times in 5 years, what else can he expect? He just needs time to calm down. After another sleepless night, the next day he called his senior and asked if it was possible to fully sell 10% of the shares. The senior fell silent for a moment and told him that it was a bit disadvantageous and that the company's future development would only be better. He told the senior that he was already very satisfied. Having been poor for so many years, this astronomical number is beyond his imagination, so he dare not expect more. He resigned only after the money was received. During that time, he remained quite calm and none of us felt anything unusual. He continued to work overtime as before, but took more leave. Later, I found out that he was going to transfer shares and discuss the follow-up of funds with the bank. After receiving the funds, he made a short-term investment in my investment bank with an average monthly interest rate of 5 figures. He planned to handle this money well after getting married. In the last month of his resignation, he continued to work obediently, facing criticism from his superiors and refusing to talk back. He slowly bid farewell to his colleagues on a daily basis. Differently, he no longer works overtime and leaves punctually at 6 p.m. every day. Observant colleagues will notice that he is wearing the latest watch. That watch is over tens of thousands of yuan, which he has liked for several years. He bought a LV backpack and replaced the old computer bag. They all wear work clothes to work in the unit, so he can only freely express himself on his shoes. When he asked me for advice, I recommended the latest shoes to him at that time. Those 2 shoes can cost me half a month's salary. But he said it looks good, it's just too cheap. On his last day of work, which was Friday, he spent several thousand yuan to invite more than 10 colleagues from the same company to a famous seafood buffet in New York for a farewell dinner, except for the company leaders. The above is his wealth history and the events after achieving financial freedom. I have written down almost all the details I remember. That's all for this issue. If you have any questions, you can communicate in the comment section. If you are struggling with investment and financial management in your daily life, you can follow me with your fingers and give you different perspectives to plan your investment and financial management, making your life more comfortable. See you in the next issue.